What happens when a home exists only in your memory? Can you actually rebuild it just with stories? Well, today we're going to find out. We're diving into the echoes of a lost hometown, a place called Kwangdeok-myeon, brought back to life by the people who remember it most. Okay, so let's set the scene. It's 2007, and a very special group of people has gathered for the Kwangdeok-myeon Community Association meeting. And this isn't just any meeting. You've got former teachers, community advisors, presidents, basically a room full of living history. Their mission? To draw a map of their hometown, a place that no longer exists on paper. They're going to do it entirely from memory. And we get to be a fly on the wall for this incredible conversation.
And this really brings us to the big question we're exploring today. How in the world do you rebuild a home using nothing but stories?
So where do you even begin a journey like that? For them, it started with the names of the places they called home. You're about to see how the land itself had a story, and how those stories got captured in a name.
Let's start with a village called Wonjingdong. Now, the name literally translates to the distant well. Seems simple enough, right? But the story behind that name is what really makes it special.
One of the honorary advisors at the meeting, we'll call him HA2, just brought this name to life. He remembered, in winter, steam would rise from it. In summer, it was so cold. And the water? He said it was so good that people would travel from all over just to get a drink. All of a sudden, Distant Well isn't just a name on a map. It's a feeling, a taste, a journey.
And that's not the only place with a story baked right into its name. Let's talk about Hwanggang-po. During the Goryeo dynasty, this wasn't just some small village. It was a major port, a seriously important hub for trade and transport.
That same advisor, HA2, he painted this picture of a place just buzzing with energy. Goods would arrive on boats, get loaded onto carts, and then sent off to the capital, Kaesong. And of course, to support all that activity, the port was packed with inns, taverns, and shops. It was the absolute economic heartbeat of the whole region.
So after talking about the names of the land, the conversation naturally drifted to the people and the places that made Kwangdeok-myeon so unforgettable. Right away, another advisor, HA1, jumped in with a story about a local legend, a man named Mr. Lee. He was a champion in Caesarium, which is Korean wrestling. And he wasn't just good, he was an absolute force of nature. He was so strong that he famously won oxen from other villages as prizes. I mean, can you imagine being known as the guy who wrestles for livestock? Incredible.
But, heroes aren't always about physical strength. The honorary township head shared this really powerful memory of his teacher, a Mr. John. Back during the Japanese occupation, students were often forced out of school for farm labor. But Mr. John? He secretly let the kids who wanted to go to college stay in the classroom and study. Think about that risk. He could have easily lost his job, but he chose to protect his students' futures instead.
And the landmarks were just as legendary as the people. At the center of many villages were these ancient zelkova trees, some of them believed to be almost 1,000 years old. These weren't just trees, they were living, breathing community centers, places to gather and playgrounds for the kids.
Several people at the meeting remembered one zelkova tree in particular. It had been struck by lightning, which hollowed out its trunk. But here's the amazing part. It just kept on growing new leaves every single year. And that hollowed-out trunk? It was big enough for all the local kids to play hide-and-seek inside. It was like a living, resilient playground.
Then there was the Dodang House. And this story from the compilation committee chairman is just wow. His father built this place for the community. And get this, it had glass windows, modern furniture, a park, a pull-up bar, and even a sports field. At a time when most buildings had thatched roofs, this was a mind-blowing multi-purpose community center built by one guy for his entire village.
Okay, so you've got the map, you've got the legends, but what was day-to-day life actually like? The stories turned to the rhythm of the community, how people worked, how they ate, and of course, how they had fun.
One of the coolest local traditions they talked about was a fishing method called gayamagi. The name itself is actually a local dialect. Gai means stream and magi means to block, so it literally means to block the stream.
And the technique was pure genius. Here's how it worked. First, at low tide, they'd set up these huge nets all the way across the stream. Then, the tide would come in, and all the fish would swim right past the nets upstream. But when the tide started to go out again, the fish were trapped. They were stuck in the shallow water behind the nets, and people would just scoop them up by the cartload. So simple, but so effective.
Now, this number might seem totally random, but trust me, 1931 is a year that the residents would never, ever forget. And yeah, it's tied to an incredible fishing story.
See, in 1931, there was this massive drought, and the Okreon Reservoir dried up completely for the first time in 30 years. The honorary president of the association, he remembered it vividly. He said every household took home about 3 cartloads of fish. A drought that somehow led to this unbelievable moment of abundance for the entire community. Just amazing.
But fishing wasn't the only game in town. Ginseng farming was a serious art form there. You couldn't just throw some seeds in the ground. No, you had to prepare the soil for an entire year, mixing in special grass and fertilizers to age it just right before you could even think about planting.
And get this, the absolute best, most prized fertilizer they used was, you're not going to believe this, mud. Specifically mud scraped from the walls of 40 or 50-year-old traditional houses. This stuff, this aged organic material, was so valuable that some people could literally tear down their old house, sell the mud from its walls, and have enough money to build a brand new one. Wild, right?
Of course, life didn't stand still. Modernization was coming. Before a big bridge was built in the 1940s, you had to take a ferry to cross the river. And as a few members recalled, if the river froze or the water was too low, you were just stuck. Students were late for school all the time. So the arrival of that bridge, and later on buses, was a total game changer for how people lived and moved.
But of all the events and traditions, there was one thing that brought the entire township together in perfect harmony: the annual school sports day. The honorary county head described it not just as a school thing, but as a massive festival for everyone. It was a day filled with food, celebration, and some friendly competition, like the legendary village versus village relay races.
You know, as you listen to all these voices piecing their world back together, from the taste of well water to the thrill of a relay race, you realize something pretty powerful. These aren't just memories. They are the living threads that are stitching a lost hometown back together, keeping it alive for generations who will never even get to walk its streets.
And that really leaves us with a final thought. Beyond the maps, beyond the buildings, what is it that makes a place truly and deeply unforgettable?